Tonight, Saskatchewan is struggling under the weight of flu cases this fall. We find out why it's so bad. Also, a birth certificate obtained by CBC is shedding more light on Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond's heritage. Plus,
to be able to go out on my 5th year and with the championship would really mean everything.
The U of S Huskies are headed to the Vanier Cup. We check in with the team's quarterback, who's looking for redemption.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Tuesday, November 22nd, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. The Public Health Agency of Canada says this year's flu season is hitting earlier and harder than past years. It's particularly intense here on the prairies, where flu shot uptake has been slow. And as Sam Sampson reports, children have the highest rate of hospitalization from the flu.
Administering flu shot.
Edmonton pharmacist Kahi Angela Song has been steadily poking people with the flu shot for weeks. The Public Health Agency of Canada reports northern and central Alberta are the only places in the country with widespread influenza, meaning there are cases throughout those areas. Song sees that reflected in her empty shelves.
We get many calls every day, on average about 20 to 30 calls, looking for kids' cough suppressants, asking for recommendations for any symptom control.
All 3 prairie provinces are reporting lower than normal flu shot uptake, fewer than 18% across the board. Overall, the prairies have the highest rates of positive flu tests. Almost 1/3 of swabs taken come back positive for influenza. Experts say the West normally gets the flu first because school starts sooner and the climate is drier, but this year's numbers are higher earlier. One researcher says pandemic precautions kept people healthy over the past few years, and that caused many people to forget about the flu shot.
So what we have is a population that really does not have much kind of partial immunity from prior exposure to influenza or partial immunity from more recent vaccination. And so it's a bit more of an aggressive uptick because people are just that much more susceptible.
Canadian children can get the flu shot at 6 months old, but right now, kids under 5 have the highest rates of hospitalization due to influenza. In the past week, 2 Canadian children have died from the flu.
That's super scary. We're very fortunate that none of our kids so far have had to have been hospitalized this year because of the flu, and I just hope that continues because we have to avoid the hospital. There just is no option at this point. We really don't want our kids to be in the hospital because who knows, they could sit and emerge for 2 days before they actually get a hospital room.
Shipments of children's pain and fever medication have arrived in Canada. Healthcare workers we spoke with say that'll help, as will getting the flu shot and masking up indoors. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Regina.
A prominent First Nations scholar says a birth certificate recently obtained by CBC has convinced her that Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond does not have a legitimate claim to Indigenous ancestry. Turpel-Lafond is a former Saskatchewan judge and high-profile academic. She has claimed that her father was a Cree child who was adopted by her non-Indigenous grandparents. But a birth certificate recently obtained by CBC casts doubt on that story. The CBC's Jeff Leo has this update.
Cindy Blackstock says when she read CBC's story about the birth certificate, that was the final straw for her. The government-issued document says that Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond's father, William Turpel, was the natural-born child of British parents, not an adopted Cree boy, as Turpel-Lafond has claimed. Blackstock is a McGill University professor and a nationally recognized advocate for children. She says over the past few weeks, she's been following CBC's reporting about Turpel-Lafond and her claims to have Cree ancestry. And that reporting has led her to have serious concerns, but she says this latest revelation, this birth certificate, has removed all doubt.
Seeing that birth certificate to me was pretty clear and convincing evidence, suggesting that in this case, there is no Indigenous identity per se, that the only Indigenous identity claim comes from being a member of her husband's community, and that doesn't make you Indigenous.
She points out that some Indigenous leaders have defended Turpel-Lafond by pointing out that she has been accepted by her husband's community, the Muskeg Lake Cree Nation in Saskatchewan. But Blackstock points out that Turpel-Lafond has claimed to be from the Norway House Cree Nation in Manitoba. She says she's spent a lot of time in Norway House and has never heard Turpel-Lafond's name.
I've often heard how proud they are of their nation members, including Jordan River Anderson, the founder of Jordan's Principle, amazing people like Tina Keeper. I've never heard any conversation regarding Mary Ellen when I've been up there. So that also carries a lot of weight, is people from the community are saying that this does not line up with their memory.
Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond has lived, quite literally, all of the lives that can be lived in the law.
Blackstock points out that Turpel-Lafond is still employed by UBC, and she has been granted many honorary doctorates from universities across the country. She says if Turpel-Lafond received any benefits based on her ancestry claims, then she received them illegitimately, and those universities need to take action. CBC has provided Turpel-Lafond a copy of the birth certificate and requested her comment, but she has not replied. Jeff Leo, CBC News, Regina.
The federal government announced changes today in carbon pricing across the country. One that affects our province is that large emitters here won't be subject to federal limits anymore. Until now, Ottawa's system called for a cap on carbon emissions. Big industrial emitters would then have to pay penalties if they exceeded the cap. But Saskatchewan has been pushing for its own plan to reduce industrial emissions, and now Ottawa has signed off on that. The Saskatchewan system focuses on incentives to reduce emissions rather than a cap. For instance, regulated emitters would receive credit for cutting emissions.
Each industry, each proponent, each business would have a baseline benchmark. If they meet that reduction target, and it's an intensity. I want to point that out. It's an emission intensity target. If they meet that target or exceed that target, they would have an opportunity to earn a credit.
Meanwhile, the federal fuel charge will still apply in Saskatchewan. Next year's quarterly climate action incentive payments for a family of 4 in this province will be $340. Saskatchewan still leads the country in greenhouse gas emissions per capita. A grieving family says their loved one was prematurely discharged from Regina General Hospital last November following an overdose. And within a day of his release, 31-year-old Shane Turner died of another overdose. Today, his family joined the NDP at the legislature to call for more addictions treatment options.
The night of November 7th, my brother experienced an overdose, which resulted in him to be hospitalized. In the hospital, within a 4-hour period, he had pleaded to an addiction counselor, multiple nurses, and a doctor for detox 7 times. He was experiencing withdrawal, and he knew he needed medical care. Instead, he was sent home with these 2 pamphlets and a cab voucher. He was advised by the addiction counselor to seek social assistance. However, my brother didn't need social assistance. After a near-death experience, he needed continued health care. The use of drugs does not mean that people forfeit their right to equal health care. He was released, and that very same day, my brother died of a fentanyl overdose.
The family has reached out to the coroner's service to call for an inquest. The Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Everett Hindley, says this is the first time he's heard of the Turners case, and he'll look into it further. The average City of Regina homeowner is set to pay a lot more in taxes under the city's proposed budget. The budget was unveiled today at City Hall. It would see the average homeowner pay nearly $200 more in city taxes in each of the next 2 years. The proposed tax increase will help to fund an impending infrastructure deficit and upgrades to the Buffalo Pound water treatment plant. Not included is a $123 million proposal that would see the city end homelessness. In order to fund that program, the average homeowner would be asked to pay an additional $487 in 2023 and an additional $142 the following year. It's a cost that Mayor Sandra Masters says she would not vote for.
I think that it's beyond our jurisdiction, and I get You hear from some that folks don't care about jurisdiction. Our job is to care about jurisdiction. We are not social services, we are not health, we are not corrections, we are not mental health. That's not what we are. We're a city.
City administration appears to agree. That's why they have not included the motion in the budget they are sending to Council for approval, but it could be added when Council debates the final budget next month. A report from Statistics Canada shows Regina has the highest homicide rate in the country among larger cities. There were 15 homicides in Regina last year. That's the highest number since Stats Canada began counting homicides in 1981. More than half of the homicides were gang-related. Police Chief Evan Bray says there are many issues that contribute to that.
We're challenged with that. Homicides are the most serious crime that a community sees, and we see, the victimization and the trauma that comes from that. It really does affect the community. It's a real problem, and I feel like I talk about this often, just the complexity of the social issues, the availability of weapons like firearms that can cause a different outcome than two people getting into a fist fight.
Firearms were a leading cause of deaths in the city's homicides, and 2/3 of the victims were Indigenous. Stats Can says the disproportionate number of First Nations victims reflects the ongoing legacy of colonialism. It was a somber service in Regina this morning to commemorate the Holodomor famine. It killed millions of Ukrainians 90 years ago, and today the presence of displaced Ukrainians was a poignant reminder of the current crisis. Rotunda of the Legislative Building to hear songs from a choir, listen to speakers, and light a memorial candle. In the early 1930s, as a result of Soviet grain policies. This year's commemoration is the first since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February. The crowd heard from one woman who escaped from Bakhmut, a city in eastern Ukraine that became a regular target for the Russians in May. People moved outside to the Holodomor Memorial in Wascana Park to lay flowers. International Holodomor Day will be officially recognized on Saturday. Well, not a bad day for a stroll or a bike ride. People in Saskatoon were sure enjoying this warmer weather today, even starting to get a little bit slushy in places. And it looks like we may just get to enjoy the warmth a bit longer. Heather Morrison has her full forecast when we come back. Welcome back. Scientists are asking residents in the Niagara region of Ontario to keep an eye out for space rocks after a meteorite crash landed in Lake Ontario over the weekend. The fireball, which was 1 meter in diameter, lit up the southern Ontario sky early Saturday morning. It ended up in the lake along the shoreline near Grimsby, just east of Hamilton. Some of the space rocks could be up to 4.5 billion years old. Scientists say they would be heavy and often have an outer crust that's black. They're asking anyone who finds a space rock to consider donating it to the Royal Ontario Museum to be studied.
This weather update is brought to you by Capital Ford Lincoln. 22 model clear-out is on now.
And Heather Morrison joins us now for a look at our forecast. Nice to step outside without the air hurting my face today, Heather.
It was a beautiful day in Saskatchewan, the kind of winter day you wish you could just rinse and repeat, but unfortunately for parts of the province, that's not going to be true. But hey, let's start with the good news. Here's our current temperatures across the province right now. So as you can see, we're experiencing some really mild temperatures. We're about 6 degrees above normal for this time of year. Now, if you look down at Maple Creek sitting at +5, they hit +7 today. That's 8 degrees above normal for this type of year. And the mild temperatures sticking around overnight. We're seeing lows between -2, -6 all across the province. So that's going to be pretty mild. And then we're going to be waking up to these mild temperatures again tomorrow morning. You can see -4, -1 in the central region. And then down there in the southwest corner of the province, we're going to be above 0 when we wake up. So here is what is bringing us this really mild weather. As you can see see there, we're in a bit of a ridge with the upper atmosphere. You can see those greens there, that sort of lighter green on top. That's the mild weather. So here's what's going to happen in the next couple days. We're going to see that upper atmosphere pushing through, moving on. So I'm going to talk about what that means in just a second. But the good news is in the long run, as you can see, we're going to move into another ridge in the upper atmosphere. That's when we're going to get into the golds and yellows. And that's when we're going to see some really mild temperatures, some really above normal temperatures as we push through the week. So what does that ridge moving through means? Well, here we are sitting 6 o'clock, clear skies in the province, but keep an eye on Alberta. Do you see that system building? That's going to be pushing through overnight tonight. So as you can see, it's going to hit the southwest corner of the province in the morning. For some reason, it wants to hop, skip, jump over Saskatoon to that central east portion. And the good news about this is it's going to be fairly quick. So as you can see, by the time we get to tomorrow evening, we're going to be seeing some clear skies again. Now with this system moving through, we're also going to be getting a lot of wind. So as you can see, we've got some wind gusts already this evening, 43 kilometers per hour in Maple Creek. In the morning when we wake up, not too intense, maybe just in that southwest portion where they're experiencing that precipitation, but it's going to be picking up in the middle of the day here for most parts of the province. So that is a look at the wind gusts. It's going to calm down as the day goes on. Tomorrow and Thursday should be back to some pretty mild wind temperatures. Or wind speeds, pardon me. So let's take a look now at our 7-day forecast for Regina. As you can see, tomorrow there's a chance of that mix of snow and rain, but by Friday, +9 with a little bit of wind, should be fairly nice. Saskatoon, similar story, except we are going to skip that precipitation tomorrow. We like our roads nice and clear, and then by next week, we're getting into a little bit of snow and then some colder temperatures as well. So a pretty nice day today, and then tomorrow we are going to be hitting a bit of precipitation, but it should be nice overall, Ethan.
Yeah, near double-digit temperatures. I could really start to get used to that, Heather.
I wouldn't mind it for November, no.
That is true. All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ethan.
Saskatoon residents will be able to get around town on rented e-scooters pretty soon. City Council has approved a 2-year pilot project that will see 2 companies operate up to 500 of the scooters. The project is set to begin in the spring, but you'll be limited on where you can ride and how fast you can go. You also have to be at least 16 to ride them. After the first year of the project, the city will consider allowing privately owned electric scooters. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. As we told you yesterday, the U of S Huskies football team is headed to the 57th Vanier Cup. The championship game takes place this Saturday in London, Ontario, and the Huskies will play the Laval Rouge et Or. It's the second year in a row the team will make a Vanier Cup appearance, and they've earned it, finishing first in the Canada West Football Conference, only losing 1 game in the regular season. Mason Nias is the team's quarterback. It is also his 5th and final season with the team, and he's with us now from Saskatoon. Hi, Mason.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. Thanks for joining us. First of all, let's start maybe a little while back with last Saturday's UTech Bowl. What was that win like for you, especially since you were named Offensive Player of the Game?
Yeah, obviously it's fantastic winning national bowl games. They're not easy to do, and it's never easy to get to a national championship. So it's definitely something to be proud of and something to be grateful for. But ultimately, I think there's things that we can clean up from that game and that we're going to have to clean up going into to play the Rouge et Or here in the Vanier Cup. So definitely happy with the win, but definitely not satisfied either.
Right now, this time last year, you were playing in the Vanier Cup, as I mentioned. Didn't quite earn the victory that time around. So, what would it mean for you and for your team to win it all this time?
Yeah, it'd mean everything, right? That's why you play the game, is to win a Vanier Cup, win a national championship. It's been our team's goal every year since I've been here. And the last few years, we've kind of been right there. Obviously, last year specifically, we couldn't get it done. So, to be able to go out on my 5th year and with the championship would really mean everything.
Now, the forecast calls for some sunny skies, some warm weather in London on Saturday. Will that help you in your playing after a few cold, snowy playoff games?
Yeah, I'll definitely take good weather with a little wind all day long. So to get me out of the Saskatchewan, we've had some pretty crazy games here in Griffiths in the playoffs. So yeah, I'll definitely welcome sunny skies all day long.
Is there anything else differently that you think you're going to be doing this time around this year versus last year in the Vanier Cup to help you get that championship title?
I don't think anything too much different. I know we've changed structure quite a bit. We obviously played Montreal in the UTech Bowl in the semis last year and won that game. And the Vanier Cup was played in Laval and Quebec City. So we kind of stayed on the East Coast the whole trip, and we were there for about 2 weeks. Where this time around, we went out to Antigonish, Nova Scotia, flew all the way back to Saskatoon, and then off to London here on Wednesday. So a little bit different of a week structure. And then in preparation, pretty similar, just watching a lot of tape, just trying to get my body and mind right for the game.
Now, this will be your last game of your university football career. You've never lost a home game while you were starting quarterback. So I guess win or lose here, what does leaving that kind of legacy mean to you?
Yeah, obviously it means a lot. There's been so many great players, great quarterbacks here at the University of Saskatchewan. We have such a rich football tradition here, and just they kind of put my name at the likes of guys like that, like Brent Schneider, Steve Beelan, those type of quarterbacks. It's pretty cool. And yeah, it's just all about kind of, you know, being remembered here at the university and just trying to leave a good legacy. And I think I've done a pretty good job of that, and hopefully a national championship would help that as well.
All right. Well, we wish you the best of luck, Mason, in everything that you do, and especially this weekend. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Mason Nias is the quarterback for the U of S Huskies football team. The Huskies play in the Vanier Cup on Saturday in London, Ontario. And CBC will have full coverage of the Vanier Cup on most of our platforms. Coverage begins at noon our time on Saturday. You can watch it here on CBC TV, on cbcsports.ca or the CBC Sports app, or on CBC Gem. And Heather's back with one last look at our forecast.
Yes, Ethan, well, it should be a pretty mild night. Let's take a look at what's going to be overnight in Regina tonight. So sitting around -4 with the wind chill, feeling about -10, partly cloudy overnight. So that's where we get to enjoy those milder temperatures. And then waking up tomorrow morning, -3, that wind starting to pick up. It's not going to get going till about midday. It says right now we're skipping that precipitation, but it might hit a little bit later in the day. Tonight in Saskatoon, -4, some fog patches overnight. And then you can see again, we wake up to a little bit of wind tomorrow morning and a high of -3. And then I think this is probably the first time the forecast has included the Middle East here at CBC Saskatchewan. But Canada versus Belgium at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. In Qatar, it's going to be 24, clear, and just minimal wind, which is basically perfect soccer weather. There you go. It's our first appearance in 36 years.
Love that, Heather, and jealous of the weather there. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
And finally, tonight we'll take you overseas, not to Qatar, but to Paris, France. Paris, of course, known as the City of Light. And once again, it is living up to that reputation. Over the weekend, the city flipped the switch on its annual holiday light display along the famous Champs-Élysées. Paris and local businesses, of course, anxious to get tourists and shoppers out after the long pandemic disruption. The lights will shine every night until January 2nd. And that is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can head to our website or our CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. Glenn Reed and Heather will be back with more local news and weather at 11. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching and have a great night.